Asterisk, have you ever wondered what happens when love finds you at the most unexpected moment? When your heart recognizes its match even before your mind catches up. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected romance and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales that remind us love is always possible, even when we least expect it. Asterisk. The first time Ellie Morgan walked into James Bennett's office, she wasn't looking for love. As the newly appointed CEO of Horizon Publishing, she was looking for results. James, a senior editor and single father, wasn't looking for love either. He was just trying to keep his job while raising his 8-year-old daughter alone. Neither of them could have predicted how quickly their professional relationship would evolve into something neither was prepared for, something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about themselves and what they wanted from life. The morning air was crisp as James hurried his daughter, Sophie, toward the elementary school entrance. His tie was crooked, his shirt half-tucked, and his mind already racing through the manuscript deadlines looming over him at work. "Dad, you forgot to sign my permission slip again," Sophie said, tugging at his sleeve and looking up with those big brown eyes that were so much like her mother's. James sighed, kneeling down to her level. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Let me see it." As he scribbled his signature on the crumpled paper, he felt the familiar weight of guilt pressing down on him. 3 years since Melissa's death, and he still couldn't seem to get this single parenting thing right. The school bell rang, startling him back to reality. "Love you, sophomore Mrs. Peterson is picking you up today, remember? I have that big meeting." Sophie nodded, giving him a quick hug before racing toward her classroom. "Don't worry, Dad. You'll do great." If only he shared her confidence. The rumors about the new CEO had been circulating for weeks. Words like ruthless and efficiency expert were thrown around the office like grenades, each one exploding with the implication that jobs would be lost. As a senior editor who specialized in literary fiction, a division that wasn't exactly breaking sales records, James knew his position was vulnerable. He arrived at Horizon Publishing 20 minutes later, coffee in hand and anxiety churning in his stomach. The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt like ascending to his own execution. "Morning, James." His assistant, Tara, greeted him with forced cheerfulness. "The new CEO wants to see all department heads in the conference room at 9. James glanced at his watch. 8:45. "Any intel on what to expect?" Tara lowered her voice. "Only that she's already fired 3 people at the Chicago office." "Perfect. Just perfect." At precisely 9 o'clock, James took his seat at the long conference table, surrounded by equally nervous colleagues. The room fell silent as the door opened, and in walked a woman who immediately commanded attention. Ellie Morgan was not what James had expected. In his mind, he'd pictured someone older, severe, wearing power suits and a permanent scowl. Instead, she appeared to be in her mid-30s, with intelligent green eyes and dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a navy blazer over a white blouse, professional but not intimidating. It was her confident stride and the direct way she surveyed the room that marked her as someone in charge. "Good morning," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I'm Ellie Morgan, and as you know, the board has brought me in to help Horizon Publishing adapt to the changing market. I've spent the last week reviewing our numbers, and I'll be blunt, they're not good." James felt his stomach tighten as she continued. "But I didn't come here to dismantle what works. I came to fix what doesn't." She paused, making eye contact with each person around the table. When her gaze met James's, he felt an unexpected jolt of something. Recognition? Connection? Whatever it was, it disappeared as quickly as it had come. "I'll be meeting with each of you individually over the next few days to discuss your departments. For now, I need comprehensive reports on your current projects, projected revenues, and staff assessments by end of day tomorrow." The meeting concluded with nervous murmurs and the shuffling of papers. As James gathered his notes, he felt someone approach. "Mr. Bennett? A moment, please." He looked up to find Ellie Morgan standing beside him, those green eyes focused intently on his face. "Of course, Ms. Morgan. I'd like to start our individual meetings with you. Your department's numbers are particularly concerning." James swallowed hard. "I understand. When would you like to meet?" "Today. 4 o'clock. It wasn't a request." James hesitated, thinking of Sophie and Mrs. Peterson, who couldn't stay past 5. "I actually have a personal commitment that requires me to leave by 5:30. Something flickered across Ellie's face, annoyance, perhaps, or curiosity. "Is this a regular occurrence?" "I'm a single parent," James explained, straightening his shoulders slightly. "My daughter gets out of school at 3, and I have a sitter until 5:30. After that, it's just me." He expected a dismissive response, maybe even a veiled threat about commitment to the job. Instead, Ellie nodded thoughtfully. 3:30, then. We'll keep it focused." She turned to leave, then paused. "How old is your daughter?" The question caught him off guard. 8. A small smile softened her features momentarily. "Good age. They still think their parents know everything." And with that, she was gone, leaving James to wonder what had just happened. The day passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. By 3:15, James had assembled every report, sales figure, and success story he could find to defend his department. He arrived at Ellie's office 5 minutes early, only to find her already waiting. "Come in, Mr. Bennett. Let's not waste time." Her office was surprisingly sparse. She hadn't bothered to personalize the space yet. The only personal item was a small framed photo on her desk, turned away from visitors. "Your literary fiction division has been underperforming for the past 3 quarters, she began without preamble. "The market for traditional literary fiction is shrinking, and your acquisition costs are too high for the returns we're seeing." James had prepared for this. "With respect, Ms. Morgan, literary fiction has always been about prestige as much as profit. The critical acclaim our authors receive elevates Horizon's reputation and—" "I'm not interested in prestige that doesn't pay the bills," she interrupted. "However, I've reviewed your complete portfolio, and I noticed something interesting." She slid a spreadsheet across the desk. James recognized it as the sales figures for a debut novel he'd championed last year, a quiet, beautifully written story about a widower raising his daughter alone. This book outperformed projections by 60%. It wasn't marketed as literary fiction, but as upmarket women's fiction with book club potential. And it worked. Ellie leaned forward. "Tell me why you acquired this particular manuscript." James hesitated. The truth was personal, too personal for a business meeting with someone who might fire him. But something in her direct gaze made him answer honestly. "I connected with it. The protagonist's experience resonated with me. Because you're also a widowed single father." It wasn't a question. James nodded, surprised she'd made the connection. Personal connection translated to professional passion, which made you market it differently and more effectively. Ellie tapped the spreadsheet. "This is what I want to see more of. Not just acquiring books because they're well written or because they might win awards, but because they connect with real readers in meaningful ways." For the next hour, they discussed strategies for repositioning his department, focusing on literary fiction that had commercial appeal. James found himself engaged in the conversation, impressed by Ellie's insights and her willingness to listen to his ideas. By the time he glanced at his watch and realized it was already 5:15, the tension he'd carried all day had dissipated. "I need to go," he said, gathering his papers. "My sitter." "Of course." Ellie stood. "We'll continue this tomorrow. I think your department has potential, Mr. Bennett. I'm not looking to cut it, I'm looking to transform it." Relief washed over him. "Thank you for the opportunity." As he reached the door, she called after him. "Mr. Bennett? Your tie has been crooked all day." James looked down, embarrassed to find she was right. Hazard of the morning rush with an 8-year-old. Something that might have been understanding crossed her face. Tomorrow, then. The next few weeks established a new rhythm at Horizon Publishing. Ellie's transformation plan was aggressive but thoughtful, and to everyone's surprise, she wasn't the cold-blooded corporate assassin they'd feared. She was demanding and direct, yes, but also fair and surprisingly open to input. For James, the changes were both challenging and invigorating. His department was being repositioned as literary crossover, focusing on books with both critical and commercial appeal. It meant saying no to some projects he would have previously championed, but also discovering new voices that excited him. His interactions with Ellie evolved from formal meetings to collaborative sessions, often running late into the evening. On those occasions, he'd call Mrs. Peterson to ask if she could stay longer with Sophie, an arrangement that was becoming increasingly expensive and unsustainable. One evening, after a particularly productive meeting about a promising new manuscript, James checked his watch and sighed. "Problem?" Ellie asked, noticing his expression. "Mrs. Peterson has a doctor's appointment tonight. I need to relieve her by 6, and it's already 5:40. Ellie glanced at the manuscript pages spread across the conference table. "We're almost finished here. Why don't I walk out with you, and we can discuss the last few points on the way?" The offer surprised him, but he accepted gratefully. As they rode the elevator down together, James found himself noticing things about Ellie he hadn't before, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when thinking, the slight dimple that appeared when she smiled, the scent of her perfume, subtle and warm. "You never mentioned what happened to your wife," Ellie said suddenly as they exited the building. The question caught him off guard. They'd developed a professional rapport, but personal details had remained largely off-limits. "Cancer," he answered after a moment. 3 years ago. Sophie was 5. Ellie nodded, her expression softening. "I'm sorry. That must have been incredibly difficult." "It still is, sometimes." James wasn't sure why he was opening up to her. "Sophie asks questions I don't know how to answer. She's forgetting things about her mom, and that breaks my heart all over again." They walked in silence for a moment before Ellie spoke again. "My father died when I was 12. I remember that feeling, realizing I couldn't recall the sound of his laugh anymore." She paused. "Have you considered recording memories? Writing them down for Sophie?" "I started a journal after Melissa died, but I haven't been consistent. Maybe that's something to revisit. For both of you." They reached James's subway entrance, and he turned to her, struck by the genuine concern in her eyes. "Thank you for the suggestion and for understanding about the schedule constraints. We all have lives outside the office, James." It was the first time she'd used his first name. "Even CEOs." With a small smile, she turned and walked away, leaving James to wonder about the woman behind the executive title. The following week brought a crisis that neither of them had anticipated. James was in the middle of a meeting with a potential author when his phone buzzed repeatedly. Excusing himself, he checked the messages and felt his heart drop. "Mrs. Peterson, Sophie sent home from school with fever. I picked her up but can't stay. My sister's surgery today. Can you come home?" "James, on my way. 30 minutes. He apologized to the author and rushed to Ellie's office, finding her in a conference call. When she saw his face, she quickly wrapped up the call. "What's wrong?" "Sophie's sick. My sitter can't stay, and I need to go home." He ran a hand through his hair. "We have the marketing presentation for the fall list this afternoon." "Go," Ellie said firmly. "I'll handle the presentation. But you don't have all the details on the literary titles. Then email them to me on your way home." She was already reaching for her phone. "Your daughter needs you more than this meeting does." The simple understanding in her voice made something twist in James's chest. "Thank you. By the time he arrived home, Sophie's fever had spiked to 102, and she was curled miserably on the couch, her favorite stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. "Hey, sweetheart," he said softly, pressing his lips to her forehead. "Not feeling so great, huh?" Sophie shook her head, her eyes glassy. "My throat hurts. And I'm cold." For the next few hours, James alternated between giving Sophie medicine, making soup she wouldn't eat, and checking his email for updates from the office. To his surprise, Ellie had not only handled the presentation but had apparently impressed the marketing team with her grasp of the literary titles. "Ellie, presentation went well. How's Sophie?" The text came around 7, just as James was trying to coax Sophie into drinking some water. "James, fever still high. Probably strep. Taking her to doctor tomorrow. Ellie, need anything?" The offer was unexpected. James stared at his phone, touched by her concern. "James, we're okay. Thanks for covering today." "Ellie, that's what teams do." The next morning, the doctor confirmed strep throat and prescribed antibiotics. James called the office to let them know he'd be working from home for the day. "Mr. Bennett, Ms. Morgan asked to be updated on your situation," his assistant informed him. "She said to tell you to take the time you need." By afternoon, Sophie's fever had broken, and she was sleeping peacefully in her room. James was working at the kitchen table when the doorbell rang. Opening it, he found Ellie standing there, holding a paper bag. "I was in the neighborhood for a meeting," she explained, though her slightly uncertain expression suggested this might not be entirely true. "I thought Sophie might like some popsicles. They helped my throat when I had strep as a kid." James stood frozen for a moment, stunned by the gesture. "That's really thoughtful. Thank you. Would you like to come in?" Ellie hesitated, then nodded. "Just for a minute." She followed him into the apartment, her eyes taking in the modest two-bedroom space. Children's books and toys were neatly organized on shelves, and framed photos covered one wall, Sophie at various ages, and several of a beautiful woman with Sophie's same brown eyes and warm smile. "Melissa?" Ellie asked softly, nodding toward the photos. "Yes." James took the bag from her and placed the popsicles in the freezer. "Sophie looks more like her every day." "She's beautiful," Ellie said, and there was something in her voice that made James look at her more closely. For a brief moment, he glimpsed vulnerability behind her professional facade. "Dad?" Sophie's voice called from the bedroom. "Can I have some water?" "Coming, sophomore." He turned to Ellie. "Would you like to meet her? She's not contagious anymore with the antibiotics." Ellie looked surprised by the invitation. "I wouldn't want to intrude." "You brought popsicles. In 8-year-old currency, that makes you a welcome guest." A small smile curved her lips. "All right, then." Sophie was sitting up in bed, her dark hair tangled around her pale face. Her eyes widened with curiosity when she saw Ellie. "Sophie, this is Ms. Morgan. She's my boss at work." "You're the new CEO," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "Dad says you're very smart." James felt heat rise to his face as Ellie glanced at him with raised eyebrows. "Does he?" "Well, your dad is very smart too." Ellie approached the bed. "I heard you weren't feeling well, so I brought you some popsicles for your throat." Sophie's face lit up. "Really? What flavors?" "I wasn't sure what you liked, so I got an assortment." "Can I have one now, Dad? Please?"